like quarterbacks to be quarterbacky. And to me, Lamar Jackson's just a great athlete.
A weird throwing motion. His accuracy is hot and cold. He is, sometimes his touch is terrible.
For 3 years, he's kicked to the curb. He's a wide receiver. He's a bust. He can't play quarterback.
Jackson's a project. He's not Sam Darnold. He's not Josh Rosen. You watched him last night. He's not even close.
With the two-time NFL MVP, Heisman Trophy winner, QB for the Baltimore Ravens, he's a man of service. He's Lamar Jackson.
His father died when he was 8 years old. Just like that, the man who was supposed to show him the world was gone. No goodbye, no final lesson, no last catch in the backyard, and a mother named Felicia Jones who looked at her young son, swallowed her grief, and made a silent promise. She would be everything he needed. She would work every job, make every sacrifice, and pour every drop of herself into making sure that boy had a chance. What she couldn't have known then was that she was raising a player who would one day redefine an entire position. But to understand how he got here, we have to go back to the very beginning. Because what Lamar Jackson experienced growing up in Pompano Beach shaped every single thing he became on a football field. Pompano Beach, Florida. A city that sits in the shadow of Fort Lauderdale, close enough to see prosperity, far enough to feel the distance. The neighborhood where Lamar Jackson grew up did not make promises. It made survivors. Poverty moved through those streets quietly but constantly, and families learned early that life required toughness before it offered anything else. Lamar entered the world on January 7, 1997. He grew up as one of Felicia's children in a household where resources were tight and the margin for error was razor thin. When his father died, Lamar was 8 years old. That age, that specific, tender, impressionable age, is when boys start looking to their fathers to understand what kind of man they should become. Lamar lost that mirror before he could fully see himself in it. But Felicia refused to let that loss become a permanent wound. She pushed Lamar toward football young, recognizing that the sport gave him something the streets couldn't: structure, purpose, and a place to put that burning energy that lived inside him. From the moment Lamar first touched a football with any real intention, something shifted. Other kids played the game. Lamar inhabited it. He didn't just run with the ball. He thought 3 moves ahead, reading defenders the way a chess player reads a board. Nobody in Pompano Beach had seen anything quite like it. But nobody outside Pompano Beach was paying attention yet. That was about to change. But first, life was going to test this family one more time in a way that left permanent marks. Because just as Lamar was beginning to find his identity through football, tragedy struck this family again. And what happened next would either break him completely or forge him into something unbreakable. Lamar lost his brother. The grief inside the Jackson household during those years was not the kind that gets processed quickly. It sits. It stays. It becomes part of the air you breathe inside those walls. Felicia was holding together a family that kept absorbing loss, and Lamar was absorbing all of it, quietly, internally, in the way young men do when they don't have the language yet to say how much something hurt. He took all of that pain, and he put it on a football field. He survived the grief. Now he had to survive the doubters. Lamar Jackson attended Boynton Beach Community High School, and from the moment he stepped onto that field as a quarterback, he announced himself to anyone paying attention in South Florida. He threw the ball with natural touch and timing, but what separated him immediately was his legs. He moved like no quarterback anyone in that program had ever coached. He didn't scramble as a last resort. He ran as a weapon, as a deliberate tactical choice, as a statement. By his junior year, college programs across the country started making calls. The film spoke for itself. Lamar Jackson had everything: the arm strength, the mobility, the football intelligence, and the competitive fire that scouts spend their entire careers searching for. Florida State pursued him. Louisville pursued him. Programs that recruited quarterbacks seriously put Lamar at the top of their boards. He chose Louisville. And that decision changed everything for him, for the program, and for the entire conversation about what a quarterback could look like at the highest level of college football. Louisville handed him the starting job, and Lamar Jackson treated it like a gift he had been waiting his entire life to unwrap. He did not ease into his college career. He exploded into it. His freshman season showed flashes of something special. His sophomore season showed something historic. In 2016, Lamar Jackson put together one of the most statistically dominant individual seasons in college football history. He threw for over 3,500 yards. He rushed for over 1,500 more. He scored 51 total touchdowns. He accounted for more total yards than virtually any player in the country. He carried Louisville on his back week after week, making plays that had fans, coaches, and analysts scrambling for comparisons and finding none that fit cleanly. The Heisman Trophy voters took notice. And when they announced the winner that December, Lamar Jackson flew to New York as the youngest player in history to win the award. 20 years old, a kid from Pompano Beach who grew up without his father, who absorbed grief after grief, who played football at a school that nobody nationally considered an elite program, and he won the most prestigious individual honor in college football history. The kid who lost everything was holding the Heisman Trophy, but the NFL was watching with skeptical eyes. And what they said next was one of the most disrespectful assessments in modern draft history. The 2018 NFL draft evaluation process treated Lamar Jackson in a way that revealed an uncomfortable truth about how decision-makers in football viewed quarterbacks who looked like him and played like him. Despite winning the Heisman, despite 2 more productive college seasons after that award, despite every measurable and every film session pointing to a player with elite quarterback traits, scouts, analysts, and front offices began suggesting that Lamar Jackson should consider switching positions. Wide receiver, running back, anything but quarterback. The reasoning they offered centered on his throwing mechanics, his size, his style of play. But the subtext was hard to ignore for anyone paying honest attention. Lamar Jackson played quarterback the way no one before him had, and instead of celebrating that originality, the NFL establishment tried to fit him into a box he had never belonged in and never needed. Lamar Jackson's response was not angry. It was not public. It was quiet, determined, and devastating. He sat in the green room on draft night in 2018. Round 1 passed. Teams selected quarterbacks who drew far less national attention, who generated far less excitement, who had accomplished a fraction of what Lamar had in college. He sat there with Felicia beside him, his mother, his rock, his everything, and he waited. Round 2 began. More picks, more waiting. With the 32nd overall pick, the final selection of the first round, the Baltimore Ravens called his name. Lamar Jackson walked to that stage, embraced his mother, and pulled on a Ravens hat. And in that moment, every team that passed on him had just made the worst decision of their organizational history. They just didn't know it yet. He survived the neighborhood. He survived the grief. He survived the doubt. Now he had to prove every single one of those scouts wrong on the biggest stage in American sports. Baltimore gave Lamar a chance, but not immediately. Joe Flacco started the 2018 season, and Lamar watched, learned, and prepared from the sideline with the patience of someone who had spent his whole life waiting for his moment without guarantees. He studied every snap. He absorbed every defensive tendency. He sat in that backup role and treated it like a graduate course in professional football because Lamar Jackson never wasted a single moment that could be used to get better. When injuries opened the door mid-season, Lamar stepped through it and never gave it back. He took over the Ravens' offense and immediately transformed it. Baltimore built an entirely new system around his unique skill set, a modern triple option attack that confused defenses at every level and had opposing coordinators burning midnight oil trying to find answers that simply did not exist yet. Lamar did not ask the NFL to adjust its expectations for him. He forced the entire league to adjust its defensive schemes for him. That is a distinction worth understanding because most players adapt to the league. Lamar made the league adapt to him. In 2019, Lamar Jackson delivered the most complete quarterback season the NFL had witnessed in a generation. He threw for 36 touchdowns. He rushed for over 1,200 yards, breaking Michael Vick's single-season rushing record for quarterbacks. He led the Ravens to a 14-2 record. He won the NFL MVP award unanimously, every single vote. Not one dissenting ballot. The entire league looked at what he did that season and agreed without argument. The boy from Pompano Beach, the one scouts wanted to move to wide receiver, claimed the most prestigious individual award in professional football. And he did it unanimously. But the NFL humbles everyone eventually, and Lamar was not finished being tested. Playoff losses began to follow Lamar in ways that felt cruel given how dominant his regular seasons were. 3 consecutive postseason exits in early rounds fed a narrative that Lamar Jackson could not win the games that mattered most. The criticism grew louder every January. Media voices questioned his ability to lead a team through playoff pressure. The same establishment that tried to take away his position now questioned his clutch gene, his mental toughness, his championship ceiling. Lamar absorbed all of it. He kept working. He kept improving. He kept showing up every single training camp with something new in his arsenal, a tighter spiral, a quicker release, a deeper understanding of opposing defenses. He refused to let the criticism define him, but he also refused to pretend he didn't hear it. Then came the contract standoff that revealed his character more clearly than any game ever could. When Lamar Jackson and the Ravens entered negotiations for a long-term extension, the process became public, complicated, and at times ugly. Lamar chose to represent himself. No agent, no intermediary, just a young man from Florida negotiating directly with an NFL franchise. The football world watched with genuine fascination and barely concealed skepticism. Agents, analysts, and former players questioned the decision openly. Lamar didn't flinch. He knew his value. He had proven his value, and he was not going to let anyone else define what that value was worth. The Ravens eventually signed him to a 5-year, $260 million contract, the largest guaranteed contract in NFL history at the time. Lamar Jackson, the player's scouts, tried to move off quarterback. The player, who sat through 31 draft picks before hearing his name, negotiated the richest guaranteed deal the sport had ever seen. For himself, without an agent. Think about what that says about who this man actually is. The 2023 season answered every remaining question with finality. Lamar Jackson played the finest football of his career. He threw for over 3,600 yards, rushed for nearly 800 more, and guided the Ravens to one of the best records in the entire NFL. The voters gave him his second unanimous MVP award, making him only the second player in NFL history to win the award unanimously twice. Peyton Manning holds the other. Let that comparison breathe for a moment. Off the field, Lamar Jackson built a life that reflects everything his mother poured into him. He stays deeply private about his personal relationships and his family. Not out of secrecy, but out of a genuine belief that some things belong to him alone, untouched by the noise of fame. He gives back to the Pompano Beach community that raised him. He carries his father's absence and his brother's memory with him every single day, using that grief not as weight, but as fuel. He created his own production company. He manages his own business interests with the same intelligence he uses to dissect defenses. He built an entire personal brand without compromising an inch of who he is, without performing for cameras, without becoming the version of himself that the entertainment industry wanted him to be. He simply remained Lamar, and the world adjusted to him, exactly as it always should have. And if you've ever been told you weren't right for something you knew in your bones was meant for you, then you already understand exactly what every single step of this journey felt like. The question now is not whether Lamar Jackson belongs among the greatest quarterbacks of his era. That argument ended years ago. The question is how high his ceiling actually reaches. He is 27 years old. He plays a position that ages gracefully when the body stays healthy. He has 2 MVP awards, a historic contract, and a Ravens organization built entirely around making him a Super Bowl champion. The only chapter this story still needs is the final one. And based on everything that came before it, the losses, the grief, the doubters, the draft night wait, the contract battle, the playoff criticism, the relentless improvement, there's every reason to believe Lamar Jackson will write that final chapter exactly the way he has written every other one. On his own terms, in his own way, leaving no doubt whatsoever. A boy who lost his father at 8 years old. A teenager who buried his brother and channeled that grief into a football. A prospect who sat through 31 draft picks while lesser evaluated quarterbacks heard their names called first. A player who negotiated his own historic contract and won 2 unanimous MVP awards along the way. That is Lamar Jackson, and his story is nowhere near finished. The greatest chapter of his career still sits ahead of him. And when he gets there, nobody will be surprised. Because this is what happens when you refuse to become anything other than exactly who you are. Drop a comment right now. What moment in Lamar's journey hit you the hardest? The draft night wait? The unanimous MVPs? Or something else entirely? I genuinely want to know. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button, because we tell these stories every single week.